Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment live and direct on YouTube, Facebook, and we want to say a welcome to everyone. My name is Mark DeVoe.
I am Mark Stay. Yes, hello everyone. 5 years, what a surprise. Celebrating 5 years. And and a huge thank you to everyone who's here. So many people here today. Robin's brought cake. This is brilliant. Robin, I hope you brought enough for everyone. Thank you for everyone listening now. And thank you to everyone who's been listening to this podcast, either from last week or from the very beginning. We simply couldn't do it without you. Mr. D, happy birthday to you, sir.
Oh, happy birthday to you, sir. Who would have known it 5 years ago? We had this ridiculous idea of doing this podcast, and here we are with a live audience, the biggest live audience I think we have ever had. We can't keep up with the chats, so we're not going to give everyone name checks, but we want to say, put in the chat whereabouts you're from, and we'll see how many countries we've got with us today. But we want to thank everyone from the deepest bottomest of our heart. We would not be here if it weren't for you. We do this show for you. We've had so much fun over the last 5 years, and so today is a celebration of not just the podcast. It's a celebration of all of you, all of you writers out there that have living your dreams, have made incredible progress over the last 5 years. And yeah, we're going to be reflecting on what the last 5 years have meant for us, what the last 5 years have meant to you as well. So we should also say, Mr. Say, before we dive in, we want to thank all of our patrons and academates. We say this every week, but it's you guys that actually enable this show to happen. You help us cover the cost of this show. It's been quite a ride over the last 5 years. And we want to also say one of our targets for season 6 is we would love to get 500 patrons. We do have a very, very, very small percentage, as all podcasts do, a very small percentage of people who actually pledge. So if you would like to be a part of that, if you're in the audience now and you're not a patron, join us. We'll mention your name live on air. Go to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. All right, Mr. Stay, let's give people a little teaser about what's coming up today. We've got an announcement that we're going to be making partway through the show.
Yeah, there's some exciting stuff coming up. We've got lots of listener questions as well that have been sent in advance of this. Lots of stuff to talk about. But also, I want you guys to think about these particular questions as we chat away. Now, I see the chat stream is just whizzing by, so you might have to repeat yourselves rather than have us scroll through the comments. But have a think about these questions. So question number 1, what's the biggest breakthrough you've had in your writing from listening to the podcast? So let us know if you've heard anything, someone said something, something inspired you. I mean, not us, obviously, but one of the guests. And also, what's been your favourite moment on the podcast during the last 5 years? So we're going to spool back to those at certain points throughout the show. But yeah, it's amazing to see so many people here. We've got people from Vancouver. We've got people from New Zealand and Reykjavik. Saivar's here from Reykjavik. We've got Melissa's from Australia. Gavin's here from New Zealand. Fantastic. Hey, it's Liverpool. Hey, Los Angeles is here as well. This is amazing. I'm loving all this.
It's fantastic.
Is great.
We've got Kerry from Geordieland, who are celebrating right now. We've got Londoners, Berkhamsted, Cambridge, York, Scotland, Wales, sunny Canada. Kind of overcast where I am right now, but lots of people from Vancouver, South Africa. It's just bonkers. So welcome to everyone. Nice. Welcome. And this is going to be hopefully one of the funnest shows we've done. Mark and I, it's weird doing it live, isn't it, Mark? We've done quite a few live shows for our patrons before, but we've never actually invited everyone in. And it felt like we were saying just before we went live, this is like proper TV. We had like a really flashy countdown. But unlike TV, we don't have a massive crew behind us with prompts. So this is completely raw and live, and Mark and I always do. But we want to kind of give you an experience as to what this kind of theatre is like when we do it. And it always helps having people live in the studio. So thank you for joining us. Now, I'm just going to give people a little teaser because a bit later on, we've got 2 things that we're going to be doing, which we're going to be announcing. One is to do with the book Back to Reality. Now, anyone who has followed this podcast from the beginning, you'll know that this is the book Mark and I wrote, and we've got something new to announce about the book, and we're going to announce that about halfway through. So I'm sorry, folks, if the cake runs out, you're going to have to stay here for a bit longer. But then towards the end of the show, we're also going to be giving away 3 copies. We're going to have competition and tell you how you can enter, give away to win one of 3 copies of the Back to Reality audiobook. So stay tuned for more information on that. So, Mr. Stay, I think we should dive in. We've been doing this 5 years now, and a lot of people probably don't realise this, but we are in completely different locations, aren't we?
Happy birthday, Bestseller Experiment. It's Kylie Dunbar here. Thank you so much for all of your advice and help and support over the years. I first contacted the show in, I think it was the end of 2017, and I was being made redundant from my uni job at that point. And I told you that I was writing a novel and I was hoping for the best. And Mark DeVoe, you read that out on that week's episode, and you said to me through the show, whilst your life is in a big mess and everything's up in the air, you have the opportunity to rearrange how it looks and before it all comes crashing back down. And you said, this is your time, I believe in you. And that really meant a lot to me. And pretty soon after that, I had my manuscript finished and I was signed to Hera Canello Books. So thank you so much for that lovely advice. And in tribute to you both, I've named two of my heroes over the years after you two. I've never told you this. There's an Elliot DeVoe in The Borrower Bookshop Holiday, and there's a Mark Firth in Matchmaking at Port Willow. So there you are, enshrined forever as romance heroes. Happy birthday.
Are you there, Mr. D? Sorry, I disappeared for a second.
Yeah,
I'm back.
I'm still
Good. Okay.
You're back. Mr. Stay was so stunned, he was just like looking at me. I was going to say, Mark, people don't realise that some people who jump on this podcast don't realise they're actually in different locations, despite the accents. I'm in Vancouver Island. Mr. Stay, you are now in Kent. And we were talking about number of miles. So if one of the people on our chat at the moment will tell us how many miles are there between Vancouver Island and Kent, and we'll stick it up. But this is a little thing I put together of podcasts the last 5 years. The podcast in numbers, okay? Right. So we have done, ready for this, Mr. Stay, 346 shows. Bonkers.
At least.
We've had... Yes. At least, yes. The ones as well that we never actually released as well. That we won't talk about those later. But number of guests that we've had, over 350. And we'd like to thank all of our guests that have been on the show, because again, without them, it would just be me and Mark talking the whole time, which I know would drive everything bonkers. This is a bonkers one. The number of minutes spent editing this podcast, 1,038 hours. I don't even know what that is in working weeks, Mark.
No, but thank you to JD and Dave and yourself, because you did it to start with, didn't you, Mr. D?
I did. And actually, I've got to say, we had to get JD and Dave as part of this team, because I literally could not do the podcast and edit it at the same time. It's a lot of work. The first time, okay, if you listen back to the first few episodes, what you'll notice is that there's no ums and ahs. I actually went through every single like lip smack and and I removed it, and that's why it took me so long. But now we're a little bit more relaxed. We've done this before. We're like, all relaxed. Number of emails that we received in the thousands, literally thousands of emails. So thank you to everyone who sent us just random notes of thank yous or random stories or celebrating your wins and like. We absolutely appreciate every one of those we get. Number of guests, the number of books that our guests have sold. This one is insane. Over 1 billion books.
Really?
It went up last week by another 80 million because we had Felix Francis. Yeah. So we're close to 1.1 billion books sold by our guests collectively, hence the Bestseller Experiment. Mark, here's a question for you. What are the most guests that we've ever had on a single episode?
I think that's the gingerbread episode. I think that's, because I think there were 4 or 5 semi-finalists for that, or finalists, and then we had Sam Eads as well on that. So that was, that 6 or 7.
And the live broadcast from your local bookstore, that had quite a lot of authors as well, didn't it?
That there were 4 authors and me. So that was or 3 authors and me, and then we got the booksellers come on as well. So I think that's probably the most that we've had. Yeah, that was
excellent stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of other numbers for you. The number of pages in Back to Reality, Mark. Have a guess. And I'm talking about the ones that ended up in the book, right. Not the first chapter that got completely cut.
I've got it on the shelf over there.
No, look.
330 something.
Ooh, not bad, not bad. 383 pages, excluding thank yous.
Okay.
And the audio book. Now, this is one that a lot of people don't know. Like, what does a 383 book look like when you have to read it out loud? Well, our audio book in numbers, 10 hours and 6 minutes. That's kind of bonkers, isn't it, to think? Absolutely bonkers.
But read by the wonderful Kim Breton and not by us. So that's
Yes.
10 hours well spent listening to a professional.
If it was
job.
read by us and we did it together like a podcast, it would probably last about 50 hours and 6 seconds. So, Mark, let's dive into some. We've asked some listener questions up front, and we're going to ask each other some questions here. So, thank you to everyone who's actually asked us these questions. So, Mark, I want to dive in first. Andrew Gall has asked, what achievements from the last 5 years are you most proud of?
That one's easy. It's all this lot here. Now, look at this. Now, there's no greater thrill than when someone who's listened to the podcast gets in touch and says, I've written a book. And it's even better when they send a copy of the book. So look, here's
Mark's gone quiet because he's at the back of his room right now.
Here's pile number one, okay? That's one pile.
Mark's going to do his back in.
And then here's the second pile. Oh, it's going to teeter over. Hang on. There we go. I'll put that there.
Gosh.
Right. So the current pile of books sent to me by listeners comes up to my tum-tum. Okay? So by this time next year, let's see if we can get to my shoulders or maybe my head.
Even better, he's at the top of Mark's head that we won't have to see his face. All right, there's an incentive. He's just giving me the British salute, the two-fingered salute. We've got lots of people actually with us today whose books are in
heavy.
that pile. Yeah, how's your back? Is your back all right?
Back's all right, yeah.
I'll tell you what, this is. So thank you to everyone who sent those books in. Mark often puts up a picture of these books on our Facebook page, and whenever a new one comes in, he puts a photo of it in front of everything. And this book has grown and grown and grown by our experiments and our academates. So thank you to everyone who sent that in, and also to say thank you to all the amazing people that have put something in their book about the bestseller experiment and how it helped them, because that's like.
It's amazing.
We don't need that, but we that's really, 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 really wonderful that you've done that as well.
No, my heart flutters each time.
It does. It's kind of almost as exciting as writing a book, isn't it, yourself, to get mentioned in someone else's book? It's it's phenomenal.
No, it's amazing.
Excellent stuff.
Hi, it's Lorna Cook, just wishing the Bestseller Experiment a very, very happy 5th birthday. You guys have been with me from the very first moment I started writing the first draft of my book until now, so long may it continue. Here's to another 5, and another 5, and another 5. Happy birthday!
In terms of achievements over the last 5 years, I think obviously, all of our listeners and the growth of the podcast and everyone being here today, all of the lovely things that we've heard from people. But I also think the fact that we're still here, Mark. We're here after 5 years, because we never planned this. It just kind of happened. And I've got to say, we've had so much fun along the way, haven't we? There have been, I can't remember laughing so hard on a Wednesday morning when we record this podcast. Mark and I always, it's true, folks, what you see and hear on screen, and we do have an absolute hoot doing this, and none of this is put on. We just roll with it and have a lot of fun. So I appreciate all the work you've done, Mark, as well over the last 5 years with the interviews, because again, I think it definitely wouldn't have happened without that as well. So thank you, Andrew, for your question. Next question, Mark, do you want to fire away?
Yes, Rachel Howe says, given 5 years have gone by, which episode stands out as your favourite and why? What's yours, Mr. D?
How do you choose between all your children? I mean, really, Rachel,
exactly.
How do you choose?
Yeah.
I think for me, there have been highlights across so many episodes. So to pick one episode that stands out it's actually impossible, completely impossible for me to do. But in terms of highlights, I think for me, probably one of the biggest highlights was the week that we went live with Back to Reality. It was the end of season 1. It was the end of the first year. and we did 6 or 7, I think, daily podcasts in a run up. But then we did that 24-hour podcast-a-thon. I don't know what you'd call it. Yeah. I have never been so tired yet elated. If you've ever experienced that feeling of complete elation and complete tiredness, it's the weirdest thing in the world. I kind of wonder if William Shatner's feeling that today, having just gone up to space. But it's that kind of sense of completely knackered and yet total exhilaration, because it was such an incredible year, that first year building up to the launch. So that really sticks out for me as one of the highlights, just more from the kind of, I guess, emotional journey of what we'd been through and the fact we got the book done. How about you, Mark? Was there one episode that kind of jumps out for you?
That was an incredible day, because also we had the sky turned red because we had all the sand coming in from the Sahara in London, and it was just absolutely amazing. But the one I've picked is, we've mentioned already, bizarrely enough, is episode 205, which was live from Harbour Books, which was such a thrill because it was our first live event with real people. And I love a live crowd, and we genuinely had no idea if it worked. I had BBC Radio Kent in there miking everything up. We had a crowd who, frankly, didn't know the podcast, so I had to win them over. And it was such good fun. And again, adrenaline. And I've tried to set up something similar twice, and both times it fell through. But stay tuned, because we might have something fun lined up early next year with any luck. Funny enough, we've had emails just in the last couple of days about something. So it's very cool. Hey, excellent Julian's stuff here. Hello, Julian. Good to see you. Hello from Brisbane.
Excellent stuff.
Wonderful.
Next question from our listeners. Steve Gowland, one of our long-term listeners. We love Steve. Welcome, Steve. If it's not too controversial, when you have a question that starts with that, you know you're in trouble. If it's not too controversial, best guest, worst guest, funnest guest, and dream guest. Take your pick, Mark.
Where to start? Well, I'll tell you what, for best, I'm not going to sing. I'm going to chicken out as well. If you chicken out from picking the best episode, I'm going to chicken out from, but I'm not going to single out any one person, but I do want to thank those people who helped me co-present the podcast in the second year. So people like Jen McMenemy, who now presents the Ancient History Fangirls podcast, Julian Barr, who's just showed up, Sam Eads helped on a few episodes. I think Sam Missingham might have jumped in on one as well. So anyone who helped out present a podcast, a big thank you to you. That was just amazing. So thank you for that.
Brilliant stuff. Funnest moment on the podcast. I think that, again, there's too many to pick from, but some of the memories I have, really, we can't. I mean, we have to mention it now. It's becoming our Stairway to Heaven, isn't it? But the Ben Aronovich episode was probably the funniest and most shocking for us. Like, we were just bombshelled after that, but we laughed so hard listening back to it. Honestly, it was just hilarious. I felt that the interview with Joe Hill just creased me up. It's so irreverent, and so if you haven't heard that one yet, go listen to that. That was brilliant. That got us off on the right foot. But again, so many comical moments, and if you listen back, I think it was in the second season, Mark, at the end of some of our episodes, we actually had a lot of bloopers that Dave, our editor, kindly put in. So if you've never listened to those episodes, listen all the way to the end, because there's a load of them where we had completely hysterical moments where Mark and I just started laughing and couldn't stop, or we said something slightly wrong, came out the wrong way. So those are some of the funniest moments listening back to them.
Hi, I'm Mike Shackle, author of the Last War trilogy from Glance. 5 years ago, I was an aspiring author on the verge of giving up. But then I stumbled across a podcast called the Bestseller Experiment, and listening to it changed my life. So thanks, Mark and Mark, for creating such a great show and building a community of the best people. Happy 5th birthday. I can't wait for more.
In fact, I think it was on it's one of the New Year's episodes, isn't it, Mark? I think at the end of maybe year 2, where we just did a compilation of all the funny moments. And it's often those unexpected moments that turn out to be the funniest, because you can't plan for them. And once you get the giggles, I mean, I'm the worst for that. Once you get the giggles, it's all over, basically.
Do you have a worst? Because I do.
Do you know? Go on, tell me yours first then.
Well, this is, whenever I interview anyone from a certain major online retailer, right, they're always friendly and polite, okay? but there's always someone standing just out of earshot, making sure we say the right thing. And it's really uncomfortable. It's like, you're chatting to someone from, this big company that now goes to space, and you're having a nice conversation, but there's someone over there looking at you like the smoking cigarette man in the X-Files in the corner. And he wasn't smoking, but, just standing there looking at you, and they're kind of on edge about it because they don't want to say the wrong thing. And I'm on edge because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So can't have that. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
This is an informal, relaxed podcast. Won't be coming
Absolutely. Back on my worst episode, Mark. My worst episode was when we finished the most brilliant interview, and we stopped. And what we always do, just so you know, I mean, we could probably talk a little bit about how we make the podcast because a lot goes into it. But after we actually do the recordings, we've got separate recordings that we have to send off. And we have to run backups of recordings because the internet. I mean, who's ever done a Zoom call or a Skype call where you don't get, stutters and the like? But I remember, and this was like not that long ago. This is like a good couple of years into the podcast. And I remember getting to the end of the episode and I remember saying, I better send off my audio file. And I went to my audio program that I have running and I hadn't pressed record. I hadn't actually pressed the red button. And I had that horrible gut feeling because it was such a good episode as well. And I just thought, oh my gosh, it's like the whole thing's completely and utterly messed up. But fortunately, thank goodness, we did manage to salvage the audio. Now, I'm not going to tell people which episode that is, but we do always pride ourselves on having as highest quality audio as possible. But we did manage to salvage it from an online recording that we had, and was I mighty relieved, Mark, I can tell you.
Do you remember after the Joe Hill, because that was the first time we used Zencaster, which we don't use anymore, and we finished recording with Joe, and then he said, okay, great, bye, and disappeared and hadn't uploaded his audio. So you had you and me, but we didn't have Joe. And so I said, Joe, go back online. I think we've lost it. Joe, go back online. And it was all there because it's all kind of recorded in the cloud. Oh my God, that was because we knew doing it. This is a cracker. This is an absolute belter. This is pure gold. Absolutely fantastic. It's bye, Joe. And I thought, have we lost a recording? Oh my God.
The technical nightmares, guys. You might see us like having fun and calm on the outside, but honestly, we are the ducks underneath the water. When it comes to the technical stuff, doing podcasts is like, flying by the seat of your pants. So brilliant stuff.
Who are your dream guests?
Now, I'm wondering if that means dream guests that we'd like to have on the podcast or the dream guests that we have had on the podcast.
Well, it's the thing. So for me, obviously Neil Gaiman and Stephen King. And I have tried for both several times. We do approach their publicists and we do drop stuff in. And
every other week.
They're both very, very busy. And but actually, here's my gushing answer, because I think the dream guest has already been on the podcast, because this is the one who's come on, told us about their first book, and then goes on to sell 1 million copies.
Yes.
So that could be Queeve, could be Steve, could be Ian Sainsbury, could be Lorna Cook, could be any one of you guys. I mentioned them because they're already on their way. But, it could be anyone. That's the dream guest. I think that was always the dream for us, wasn't it? That someone would come on the podcast, or one of our listeners would go on and sell 1 million, and, that's it,
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and actually, so on that note, absolutely. All of the people we've already interviewed, but all the people to be interviewed as well, because one of the things that we're doing in the academy that we promised people within the academy is if they go through the academy and they write their book in the academy and they go on to become a bestseller, then we will interview them as a feature interview on the Monday episode. That for me would be amazing, because that would not have just been somebody that came on the show and went on to sell a huge amount of copies or become a bestseller, but it's somebody that we kind of worked with and passed on some of this kind of stuff that we've been learning, because we're learning every week. That would be a dream guest for me, and I really do think that it will happen. It's really just a question of time, but it's amazing just hearing some of the stories of some of the people that have. I mean, I remember Lorna Cook, I think might even be with us today on the podcast, but she said she started writing she started writing with us. Like, she literally listened to the podcast, started writing, and now she's this incredible bestseller. So Lorna's story really stands out.
230,000 sold,
230,000, yeah. And now releasing a third book. So Lorna's been an incredible inspiration for everyone out there. So definitely something to inspire everyone out there that wants to kind of follow in her footsteps, for sure.
Hi, Mark and Mark. It's Pernilla Hughes. Just here to say a huge congratulations on your 5 years. It's such an achievement. And also a big thank you to say that you have been part of my writing life. You are my appointment to listen. You've got me through many hours of ironing as well. And your gems of knowledge have been so useful. Here's to another 5 years. Take care and thanks again. Bye.
Shall we have a look at? We've had some answers for these two questions. Shall we scroll through the comments?
Absolutely.
And see what people have been saying. So it's here we go. Bum, 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 talking about yourselves. There we go. One from Robin. Biggest breakthrough, simply the realization this was a realistic goal that anyone can write and be published. And that's been one of the big inspirations behind doing the podcast, was that it wasn't just about signing up an agent and a publisher. Anyone can do this now. And that is that has just been inspiring stuff.
Mark Hood has said, I have to say, write every day has been the advice I've followed the most. And we absolutely know that's been a huge breakthrough for many people, Mark included. I think that biggest breakthrough, Andrew Chapman said on the other question, how can that Ben Aronovich episode be nearly 5 years ago? Where has the time gone? Because it was very early on, wasn't it? It's kind of crazy to think, actually, that was 5 years ago. Denise says her biggest tip, writing your first draft is not the end. It's the beginning of the process. And I found that really comforting, which is great to know, because a lot of people find that advice terrifying. It's like, what do you mean? It's just the beginning. But actually, you're right, Denise, getting to that point where you realize it's a continuation of the journey just gets a little bit of relief that you don't have to write it perfectly, in your first attempt. So that's great.
Gavin says a breakthrough moment was the push to think of ourselves as authors and to actually tell other people about our writing. And this is the thing. I mean, that was, the Joanne Harris episode. She said, drop the word aspiring. If you're writing, you're a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's great. Jackie mentioned that as specifically her point, agreed, ditch the aspiring. She also said Joe Hill's comment on saying, you know what I mean, in that dirty voice. I nearly fell off my cross trainer. Verbal said, we convinced me to finally do NaNoWriMo, and that was when I wrote my most popular book, which is great. Aaron says Mike Shackle's interview was a big inspiration. So thank you, Aaron, and also thank you, Mike, as well, who knows, a very big listener of the show. What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Laura Shepherd, for me, the breakthrough is Mark Edwards. Yeah, write the book you want to write and be super, in capitals, resilient. Best moment, Ben Aronovich. I don't do editing. That would be presumptuous. And Christopher, thank you, Christopher. If we're going to get
Ben.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. You go.
I was going to say, Christopher has actually calculated number of miles. 4,000. You ready for this, Mark? Number of miles between Vancouver Island and Kent in the UK. 4,771 miles. Unbelievable. Thank you for that, Chris.
You should pop over more often. We've got people asking if Ben Aronovich is ever going to come back on the show. I am doing an event with him at the end of the month in Canterbury, at Waterstones in Canterbury. Now, it's not a podcast episode. It's a part of Ben's tour. But I'm going to see about seeing if we can record it and we might, put out a special episode. Not sure yet, but we shall see. So stay tuned for that. So that'll be lots and lots of fun. So shall we go on with the questions from listeners
absolutely.
that came beforehand? Mr. Ian
absolutely.
Sainsbury.
So another question, in Sainsbury. Shall I ask this one to you? Your favourite single piece of advice so far from Mr. Sainsbury, what would that be?
Ian adds, he says, also, sorry I'll be missing this, but I'm taking Child 2 out for birthday dinner. Well, happy birthday to Child 2. Strange name, but who am I to judge? I think my favourite bit of advice, funny enough, someone was asking me for writing advice on Twitter today, and I use this, and it's one I think that can be applied to every stage of the process, and it's just great advice for life generally. And it's from Dion Mayer, who said, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I did look it up earlier. Apparently it was originally attributed to Francis of Assisi. But I just think that thing of, because it can be such a daunting prospect, writing a novel, writing a screenplay, whatever, but if you just take it one bite at a time and focus on what's right in front of you, then you're going to get it done. So that, for me, is probably the one I use the most, that keeps me going every day as well.
No, it's brilliant. For me, it's really across a number of different guests who've all kind of echoed this sentiment. And I think it was Shannon Mayer I first asked this question to, but it was this idea about the importance of believing and visualizing that you can actually write the book, finish the book, and that you can also allow yourself to dream that book might become a success. And it's this idea that, everything is first imagined. If you want to create something in this world, you've got to first imagine it. A bit like Mr. Stay, the t-shirts that we have on. Do you want to do a quick reveal? This is something that we've never shown on the podcast. Look at this. The original Back to Reality. This is a limited edition of 2 sent by my lovely sister. Look at this on the back. Back to Reality on the front, and Mark's one, as you can see, he's got Mark 1. And my one here, it's like Child 1 and Child 2. This is, I've got Mark 1 on the
Thing
back.
1 and Thing 2.
Isn't that brilliant? So thank you to Claire, my sister, for sending that to us. She sent us that on the launch of the book. And these are the very limited edition. And do you know why, folks? Because on the front of this, it's the original Back to Reality cover that we actually then, as part of the experiment, we decided to change. As you can now see, if you're watching the video, you'll see kind of
Change
some of the
it up.
blue.
Yeah.
But so that was great. That was really awesome. So thank you for that.
Happy birthday to the Bestseller Experiment podcast. 5 years, and to think I knew you when you were just babies. Well done for being such a great, informative writing podcast. Here's to the next 5 years.
Another question for you, Mark, from Jeff White. Could you ever imagine the reach and impact the podcast would have?
Well, I think when the whole Bryan Cranston thing went mental, I got an inkling that it wasn't just, the editors and publicists at Orion making sure I wasn't slandering anyone. So that was interesting. And I think going on the Joanna Penn podcast really helped. I can't tell you how many people tell us they came to us via Joanna. And now we've got tools that allow us to know where people, listen to us. And I mean, this week we've had 1 download from a listener in Iran, and hello to you. And I hope you're safe and well. So, I thought mates would listen to it. I thought maybe people at sort of the Super Relaxed Fantasy Club might listen to it. But where it's gone now to, all over the world, and people from every corner, dropping us lines and getting in touch, it's mind blowing. It is absolutely mind blowing.
It is mind blowing, and we're moving close to over 1 million listens now. Which again was not something that we thought would ever happen, but we're very appreciative for everyone who's listened, and I'm sure some of those listens, they're people that are starting the journey. Every week we typically hear people who are starting on episode 1, and then they're trying to race through the podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal. So what I would never have imagined is binge listening. For me, seems to be the crazy thing. I can imagine binge listening or binge watching a Netflix series with 6 episodes. Like I binge watched the most recent. I'm way behind, but I just watched the last season of Homeland, which was amazing, by the way. But binge watch, binge listen. But binge listening 346 shows. that should come with a mental health warning. And some of them are quite long. I think the longest... I think the longest episode that we ever did, Mark, was 1.5 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's probably
shortest
too long.
episode was probably probably. Shortest episode probably wasn't less than. I mean, when we did those 20-minute shows,
we did those daily ones.
Run-up,
Yeah.
But even the shortest normal episode has probably been not even minimum 30-40 minutes. So, absolute lot. Mark's putting some great comments up on the screen here.
People are putting up merchandise ideas. So, and most of these people are Robin. So we should really start. People keep asking for merch. I'm just not convinced anyone's going to buy it. But I guess we're going to sell at least 5 or 6 shirts and a few mugs. So I don't know.
That
maybe
gives us
will.
a segue. That gives us a segue. Number of failed drum rolls in the podcast, infinite. We just do that because we love it. But we do need a drum roll now. We're not going to put one on, but we do need drum roll because I think now's a good time to announce something fun that we've got lined up for season 6. We were thinking, like, what could we do what could we do that we've not yet done? Something as an experiment, which will be of benefit for everyone else out there. And I think it was about 2 months ago, Mark, you mentioned that Amazon are now doing print on demand hardback books.
Yeah, hardcover books. And I did ask around and asked authors and said, so how's it going? You know, hardcover books, are they? And the feedback I've generally got is they look amazing. They're really good quality. But they don't sell very many copies. So we're a little bit wary about...
So we're going to prove that wrong.
Yeah, so we're going to launch another little experiment. So
because who doesn't love a hardback? I mean, if I ever have the option to sit with a hardback book and read it, for me, that there's something magical about a hardback. And it lasts a lot longer, but it's also beautiful on your shelf. So Mark and I have decided... drum roll, that we are going to be launching as an experiment for everyone out there. So we're doing this like to be able to report back to you whether it works or not. We're going to be launching a pledge for the hardback of Back to Reality. Now you might be thinking, but I've already got Back to Reality. I've already bought the paperback, or I've already heard the audiobook. But this is going to be a very, very special edition of the book. What we're going to be doing in the book is every single person that pledges to buy it. So you don't have to pay, you don't have to buy it now. You just have to go to a form on our website and put your name in that you're going to pledge to buy it. But everyone who pledges to buy it, we're going to put your name in the back of the book. Okay. So firstly, you're going to have your name in lights in the Back to Reality hardcover. And then secondly, many people don't know this, but we actually wrote an original first chapter, which got dropped from the actual published book. And we've had a lot of people asking us, like, can we see the original? Like, we want to know what it was like. There's some great stuff in there. Mark and I were really, we had a lot of challenges letting go of that, didn't we? Because it was a bit of a build up into the story, a bit of backstory and the like. But we decided to get rid of it. But for the benefit of everyone out there, people have said, well, we want to see, it's part of writing. Let's see the chapter that got cut. So we're going to put that in the book. Probably at the back, Mark, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, we'll put it at the back. And what I want to do, and this is something that's come out of the Academy because people in the Academy really wanted to see this. So what we're also going to do, if I can figure out how to do it, is add little annotations about what changed, what conversations we had, what our editor told us to cut, the conversations that me and Mr. D had, as a kind of little kind of sneak behind the scenes, a little director's cut kind of thing of how that first chapter came about.
Hello, Mark, and happy birthday from Ian Sainsbury here in the wilds of East Anglia. I'm sitting in front of a glowing computer screen. I put a mic in one hand, a coffee in the other, a farting dog at my feet, and when I look back over my shoulder at the window, the rain is beating down, so I feel like a proper writer. I've even got my fingerless gloves on. So it's positively Dickensian. I discovered you about a year into your podcast when Joanna Penn interviewed you, and then I went back and listened to the Bestseller Experiment from the beginning, and it quickly became my favourite writing podcast. I think I like the broad remit you've got. You're not focusing in on any one aspect. You know, you're not purely indie, you're not purely traditional. You try different things. You talk to a great variety of authors and editors and people in the industry, And it's always entertaining, and you guys got great chemistry. And I hope I speak for the community that sort of built up around the podcast when I say we love what you do. We hope you'll do it for another couple of decades. So all the best, happy birthday, and thanks for having me on the show that time. That was lovely too. What a treat. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.
So if you are interested in helping us get to 100, we're going to once we get to 100, we're going to then actually make it happen. So the idea is you pledge now, pay later. We're going to also try doing it a mass order on Amazon, on maybe launch day. But if you want to do it, please pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/back to reality, and you'll see a button there that will say hardback pledge, and you click on that, fill out the form, and you're golden. You'll also find on that page as well, if you haven't got the book or you can't wait for the hardback, you'll also find links to the audiobook, the paperback and Kindle, which are available now at all good bookstores online.
Also, if you're one of the first 100 to pledge, we're going to put your name in the back. And so there'll be a nice little list, a roster of, heroes of the Bestseller Experiment who help make this a reality. So we're going to do that as well. So yeah,
excellent
so get in there
stuff.
quick.
And thank you already to Steve Gowland, who's pledged. Jackie's in.
Hey.
Wendy said she's pledged her remarks. Suddenly, this has become a reality. Now we have to follow through. Thank you so much, folks, to everyone, for everyone who's pledging. And yeah, get over to that form, bestsellerexperiment.com/back to reality. And we will report on how this goes. Every now and again, we'll drop it in and we'll tell you how it's working. Because, if you've got a book out there and you've never released the hardback, it's definitely something that you want to look at. But again, how do you make it a bit different? And we're doing it in reverse. Most publishers put their hardback out first and then the paperback, but we're doing it in reverse. So again, different ways to do it. Jan's pledging, Gavin's pledging, Mark's pledging. Okay, this is getting bonkers. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, let's get back to some questions, Mark. We've got another great question from Steve and Neil. Question for both of us. How has your attitude, this is a great question, how has your attitude and approach to writing changed over these 5 years?
Well, if you've been paying attention, completely. I've completely changed my writing style, not just from big plotter to pantser, but I'm less methodical and more emotional. I'm a lot less concerned with structure and form. I'm really focused on moving readers. That's my big goal now. I think the whole obsession with structure is something that all writers go through because it can be taught. You can sit someone down and talk about the hero's journey and all that kind of thing. But writing something that's honest and exposing and raw, I think that's something that each writer has to discover for themselves. And when it works, it's amazing. And that thing you thought that was really strange and specific and no one else would understand, and then someone latches onto it, that's the best thing ever. And it's just it requires you to be a bit brave and put stuff out there that you think might make you look a bit of a loon, or can be exposing. There's stuff in the Woodville books, there's stuff in the next film. The next film, I know it's a film about goblins, but it's really personal. The couple in that is very much like myself and Claire, and the fears that we have. So that kind of stuff really, really makes a big difference, I think. And that's been my big change. What about you, Mr. D?
Well, it's really similar, Mark. I think for me, it's really this podcast and doing the interviews and doing our post chats about them and really going deep and analysing all the things about story. It's really enhanced my understanding and the value of story, not just in a book format, but generally in the world, in terms of the fact that we pass on stories as a way of passing knowledge and growing as a human race, like how we understand things better. It's always story. And as a writer, we're right at the forefront. Everyone here writing is at the forefront of pushing that forward. And so from a kind of a big life perspective, I think it's an incredible thing to be a part of. Because I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, you're just writing a silly old story. It's like, but it's what's in between the words. It's the themes that are hidden, if you like, or that come through the stories. And it's how every single writer puts themselves They literally put their heart outside of their sleeve. It's such a massive thing for people to do. And I think, you have to be courageous to be a writer. You have to be brave. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be a little bit bonkers, I think, as well. It's a massive undertaking. But it's that fact that you're part of something, not just the story that you're telling, but you're part of something bigger. And so it's that appreciation of what story actually represents in our world today. And I honestly, I never quite saw that or understood that before we went deep, before we wrote the book, before we started learning about the inner kind of reasons why writers show up every single day. And so that for me is really the beauty of it. And I'll also say as well, though, that emotional connection, that really there are so many constructs around writing a book, but ultimately it's what's the heart of the book. Does it shift an emotion within the reader? And a lot of people say, well, I'm not a good writer. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If you can write emotionally and you can shift an emotion within a reader, you've got them. You've absolutely got them, because that is the human experience. That's what it is to be alive. And when I read a book that shifts me emotionally, it's one of the best experiences ever.
Absolutely. And something that's been coming up a lot on recent episodes of the podcast, and we had this with Elise Valmorbida a couple of weeks ago, where she was saying your writing matters. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be heavy literature, although that has its value. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be comedic. It can be a light fairy story. It can be, you can entertain people. It can be instructional. Doesn't matter, as long as your words can help move people or give people a greater understanding of the world around them, or something as simple as a guide to how to do X, Y, or Z. All of that stuff is amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. We got some more pledges coming in. Yeah. Although Zach has asked a question. He said, I've pledged, but I hope this doesn't cost as much as a Tesla. Zach, I can guarantee you the book will not cost as much as a Tesla, guaranteed. But just to guide
Zach
people.
Zach has asked if we can sign them, which we can't do because it's coming from Amazon. Although if you want to fly me out to where you are, that would still be less than a Tesla. So I'm sure we can make some arrangements.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or if you go to any of the... Mark's becoming quite the celebrity now, if you haven't noticed, folks. He's in Waterstones in London with Joe Abercrombie, and now he's doing a Ben Aronovich. So you can also go to one of Mark's probably increasing number of events now that we're getting out of COVID, and bring the book with you. And I'm sure, Mark, you will sign it, won't you? Because you love a bit of that.
Hello, this is Joe Abercrombie, wishing the two Marks a sort of happy birthday. A happy birthday for the Bestseller Experiment, and wishing all of that podcast listeners happy reading, happy writing, and above all, happy sales.
Kate, we have a question from Julian Barr, who says, have the aims and methods of the experiment changed over the years? What do you think about that, Mr. D? Aims and methods of the experiment?
Well, obviously, the first year was all about that ticking clock, creating a deadline, which we learned through that is really the only way to be able to write and get a book finished, is to create some form of deadline. And if you haven't got a major publisher who's saying to you, right, folks, if you don't bring me a book by this date, the deal's off. As an independent author, as a writing team, you have to create deadlines. And I think in terms of the thing that we're finding most now is that there is, I guess the theme of it is there's always something new to learn. Every single episode, we learn something new. And so, the experiment is we're basically gathering every single time we find a new bit of information, we're usually applying it, whether it's within our own writing or within the coaching that we're doing, or sharing it with you on the podcast, and the like. I think it's about sending that information out and getting it out there. And it's really become everyone's experiment in some ways, I think. And that's what we were hoping, that we'd inspire people to actually take this on and most importantly, see it as an experiment, see writing as an experiment, because I think there's too much emphasis put on perfection, and this idea of having to write something and for it to be, successful or hit a certain level of sales. by giving yourself permission to experiment with your writing, there is always something you learn from it, whether it's the biggest success or the hardest failure for you, because whatever follows that, you've learned something from it. How about you, Mr. Stay?
Well, I mean, the aim has always been to inspire writers, and that's always going to continue. That's like a never-ending mission. I think the bestseller element of it is interesting because that's sort of become less and less important. I think we've realized it's not just about the numbers and how many swimming pools you got, but more about, are you happy as a writer? Can writing help your mindset? Can writing make you a better person? And can you make the world a better place with your voice and stories, and getting people's voices out there as well, who might not otherwise have been able to, especially, if they tried to go through traditional publishing. And in terms of methods, I mean, I think the Academy is a formalization of everything we've learned. The podcast is very informal. We sit back, we listen, we have a laugh, and we learn and have a chat. And, we never, I mean, today we've sat down and put out a sort of a plan for the live show because we know we've only got so long. But for each episode, we kind of wing it, don't we? We don't script it or anything like that. So, I think the Academy is where the work happens. I think where we take all we've learned and put it in some sort of order. But the podcast will always be relaxed and a laugh. And there we go. Wendy's called it the Happy Seller Experiment. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I think on your note, Mark, I think the idea of bestseller, I think, is still really, really relevant in the sense that, and this is where it shifted for me. Like, I think everyone has the dream of becoming a best-selling author. And I think it's really important to hang on to that dream, because unless you believe you can become that best-selling author, you're reducing your chance of making it happen. But what's shifted for me over the years now, as I've matured and started to grow a beard, and even yesterday on my insurance renewal policy, I actually got a discount. You ready for this, Mark? I'm so gutted. I got a discount, in quotes, this was the box, for being a mature citizen. Mature. Well, if they heard some of the things you say off air, they wouldn't agree with that. Well, exactly. What is a mature citizen? I can't. So, anyway. But as I've become older and hopefully a tiny little bit more wiser, for me, the word bestseller signifies that you have influenced and affected as many, many more lives as a result of your book being successful. So it's less about the number of sales you've got because of what that means to you in terms of your bank balance and the house or the Tesla that you can buy. It's about the fact that if you've got a best-selling book, you have influenced and changed the lives of many, many, many more people. And I think that should always be an aspiration for everyone who writes, because why do we write otherwise? It's like we don't keep these books for ourselves. So I'm going to hang on to that bestseller, but I want people to, I think it'll help people to reframe it in that way. So it's not all about your personal success. It's about what that book is as a legacy to the world. And that's the measurement. Like, has it sold a number of books? So that's what that means to me.
Excellent.
Mr. Stay, before we dive into our next listener questions, I think we'd like to announce our competition. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, if you haven't heard the Back to Reality audiobook, all 10 hours and 6 minutes of it, it's absolute blast. Please, please, please go check it out if you haven't done. But we're going to be giving away 3 copies. 3 copies we're giving away of this book. And if you would like to win a copy, it's very, very simple. You simply have to go to the newsletter tab on our website, which is bestsellerexperiment.com. And if you click on the newsletter, or you can put /newsletter, and you'll get to the newsletter, and there you'll see a picture of the audiobook. Put your name and email in, and you will be entered into the competition. Now, if you're already on the newsletter, you will already be entered. So you don't have to add in your name again. But 3 copies giving away, and it's brilliant. It's so much fun, and it brings such a different perspective to the book. We loved auditioning different people, voice actors, to kind of read the book for us. And the end results are just fantastic. And actually, the audiobook, Mark, is selling as well as the book, isn't it? This is the one thing that I find really fascinating.
I think it
it's
does
selling
better
more.
I think it's done a lot more, actually, a lot more.
Yeah.
Because, people have that free credit on Audible if they're on Audible, and it's just, boom, there it is, downloaded.
Yeah,
so,
actually, if you want to get it for free and you've not signed up to Audible and you can't wait for the competition, then go get over to Audible and download that book as your first one as well. That's another way of doing it. But so if you'd like to, pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com, click on the newsletter tab, and put in your name and email, and we'll send you, what we do with the newsletter is we send you now a weekly update every time we release a new show, all the things we've learned from it, and a direct link to the show as well. So it's really useful because we know that everyone's got so much going on in their life, and I always appreciate getting a newsletter, which kind of reminds me. So that's what you'll be getting on the other side.
Hi Marks, Julian Barr here. Congratulations on your 5-year anniversary. The Bestseller Experiment, it's been amazing to watch it grow to become more than just a podcast. Your love of storytelling has inspired such an amazing community of authors, and together you've curated a brilliant learning resource for all of us. Thanks for your friendship, and here's to 5 more years.
All right, Mr. Stay, another question for you from the wonderful Jan Carr. Congratulations, Jan, on your big Kickstarter recently. This is interesting. Jan says, the interviews always sound so well researched. How long does the preparation for each one take?
Oh, thank you, Jan. Thank you so much. Well, the big thing that's changed is we now get publicists coming to us. I mean, to start with, I was working at Orion and would either pounce on an author as they came out the lift or just beg a publicist for 10 minutes in between other interviews, which is how we got Bryan Cranston. It's how we got Michael Connelly in the back of a car, But we get emails every week from publicists. And what I do is I always look for an angle. What can this author offer our listeners that's a bit different to whoever's been on before? And often it's a small thing, and that becomes the focus of the interview by taking that one little thing and focusing on it. So we start by plugging their book because that's why they've been sent out into the world. They've got a new book, they've got something to sell. That's always fun. But then I try and turn the conversation onto that one unique thing. As part of the preparation as well, I spend some time before the interview looking at their website, their blog, their Twitter, at other interviews that they've done. That's where you can discover some really interesting tidbits of their lives, things that they like to discuss, things to avoid, because sometimes people, there's subjects they want to avoid. And, I like to have sort of 5 or 6 bullet points to get going. But actually the key thing with any interview, the biggest lesson I've learned is to listen, because they will mention something in passing that you were not expecting, that you hadn't planned for, and that can be a really wonderful surprise and take you off on a tangent that you hadn't expected, and that happens a lot.
Yeah, and also not to mention as well reading the books, which I think if you look at like Bryan Cranston, I remember it was like we had it quite short notice and we got his autobiography, and it was just like, plowing through 300-400 pages. And then I remember making copious, I made notes on every single chapter of that book. I mean, it adds an incredible amount, but it is an amazing privilege to be talking with all these authors. And like you say, you never quite know. I think so as a tip for anyone who does any kind of interviews out there, if you try and structure it too much, then you might miss some of the gold that can come out, which is often quite unexpected. And that's often where the best bits of the interviews have come out. But that's a great question, Jan. Thank you so much for that. And we have Kerry with us in the audience as well. And she sent us a question in advance. She says, has working with each other changed you both? Mindset, process? Has any of Mr. D's woo rubbed off on you, Mr. Stay?
Stop rubbing your woo. Well, look. Here's the thing. Just as there's no such thing as alternative medicine, okay? There's medicine that works and there's medicine that doesn't. And the same goes for woo-woo. There are some fantastic ideas for living your life and there's complete twaddle. And I think Mr. D has learned when to avoid the twaddle. That's how I see it. That's just how I see it. Also, Kerry, how come nobody asks if any of my cynicism has rubbed off on Mr. D? So, why does no one ever ask that?
That's really good, actually. That's a good question. Yeah, well, I guess over time we do this another 5 years. Who knows, right? I mean, we're moving into that grumpy old man territory pretty rapidly, aren't we? But right, but yeah, I mean, I think what I really enjoyed, and it's a great question, Kerry. But what I really enjoyed was seeing a shift in you, Mark, over the first year or two, where at the beginning it was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous, it's never going to happen. We were having a bit of fun with that, obviously, but I think there was some genuine like, okay, this is a bit bonkers. But I think it's been really fun. It's been fun actually seeing the emails that we've got from people and hearing the stories that we've got from people who've maybe listened to the show and been affected by this incredible positive outlook we have on the world. I think it's a really important way for me anyway. It's really important for me to kind of live life like that. Generally, I hope for people who live around me and have to put up with me like every day, that this is again not put on for the podcast. This is how I like to live and breathe in the world. And
he tones it down for the podcast.
I do tone it down actually. Oh yeah. Yeah, God help us if I ever do a podcast on 4,000 Saturdays or something, which is off the charts. But actually, on that note, I've never really pushed it much, and I think maybe I should after 5 years. If you may not know this, but I do have a website, which is where it's not where the woo woo lives, but it's where I kind of talk a lot about the bigger kind of life, spiritual dreams, visioning, all that stuff. It's called 4,000 Saturdays. So if you want to go and check that out, you can pop over and see the kind of stuff I get to when I'm not on the podcast. So it's 4000saturdays.com. So go check that out. Great question. Let's ask very quickly. We've got a couple of minutes left, Mark. Alex mentioned a question. Alex, thank you so much for your question. What are the most commonly repeated tips and suggestions we've heard across authors that we've interviewed? Do we have a top 5?
We do. Write every day. We heard that a lot, even though Sarah Pimber said it's bollocks, but she did caveat that by saying that at least think about your book every day. And I think that is, I don't write every day. It's like practicing scales as a musician. When you start out, you should really do it every day. When you kind of get to a certain skill level, you don't have to do it every day, but I'm thinking every day. Be yourself, find your voice. Okay, don't try and be someone else. Don't try and be, as I did, be a combination of Douglas Adams and David Mamet and John Sullivan. That's not me. Those are the things I like. 3, find your tribe, find other writers. And that's one of the wonderful things about the Academy and the Bestseller Experiment group on Facebook, is we found wonderful tribes of writers who have that positivity about them. 4, persevere. Giving up is guaranteed failure. That's one bit of woo-woo you came up with early on, which absolutely works, 100% works. This too shall pass. There's going to be good times and bad times, but you have to persevere. And I'm talking sometimes about decades, because I've been doing this seriously since my daughter was born. She's nearly 22. So, it can be a long time. And finally, semicolons are the work of Satan. So, yeah.
I think that's brilliant. And I mean, that pretty much sums it up.
Hi there, Mark and Mark. Happy anniversary to the Bestseller Experiment podcast from me, Kate Harrison, aka Kate Helm, aka Eva Carter. I make it a regular part of my Monday routine to download and find out what you guys are chatting about. And I know that you've helped so many writers along their journeys, whether they're just starting out or like me, are published in lots of different names. There's always something interesting on the podcast. And I wish you a very happy birthday, lots of celebrations, and another 5 years of brilliant podcasting ahead.
We started the first season thinking we could find the 7 secrets to bestseller success, didn't we? That was my goal anyway. I was like, right, every time I heard something. But, I think the whole point of this is that this is a lifelong learning. We never stop learning as writers. It carries on and it never stops. And the minute we think that we've got it is the minute to be wary, because that's when we stop growing and learning. So, that's why we're always open. But I think, for me, the writing every day it's so huge, because it's the currency for the author. Like, without that consistency of writing, you don't get the book, you don't get to then explore all the crazy things that can happen when you put a book out there and get that kind of wonderful feedback from people. So for me, that's foundational for everything. We now have a argument going on the chat with Laura Shepherd, who says, no, semicolons are the best.
Well, I've had the pleasure of editing Laura's work, and I know all about her addiction to semicolons. So we'll talk later, Laura.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's pledged for the bookmark. I've literally just jumped onto the form to have a look at what's going on here. This is bonkers. So thank you to Steve, Wendy, Jackie, Barb, Gareth, Gavin, Mark, Jack, Andrew, Zach, Tom, Kylie, Kerry, Fadsy, Jan. We're racing towards that total of 100.
We have to do this, aren't we?
Thank you so much, everyone. If you haven't pledged yet, there's still time. Obviously, if you're listening to this on Monday when we put this podcast out, there's plenty of time to pledge. But thank you for everyone who's done it live on the show. We really, really appreciate it. Mr. Stay, we are coming towards the end of our hour, and we have to let these good people. Some people have to get to bed if you're in the UK. Some people, if you're in the west coast of Canada, it's almost time for lunch. And for everyone on the east coast of Canada and the east coast of America, they've got those earbuds in when they should be working. So thank you for joining us. And for everyone in Australia who's got up, and in South Africa who should be definitely kind of tucked up, thank you so much to everyone. And we just really want to reiterate this again. We say this a lot, but we could not do this podcast without you. Every single comment, every single email, and most importantly, every single word that you've written, has been our writing fodder to keep this going for 5 years. So it's thank you to you for being a part of this podcast. And what we would say is, if you love this podcast, please do consider supporting us on Patreon. It's bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And what we'll also say is, if you love this podcast and you have a writer friend, please let them know. Please forward them my newsletter. Please drop them an email and say, check out the show. This is how the podcast will continue to grow, is through word of mouth. Just like we know with books, that's actually another big bit of advice we've got, isn't it? Word of mouth really helps to grow a book, and it does for the podcast as well. So if there's anyone left in the world that you haven't mentioned this to, please let them know about the podcast. Mr. Stay, any closing thoughts your end?
I'm just blown away that we're still doing this, that people are getting so much out of it, and the fact that that massive pile of books behind me, I wonder how many of those might not have happened, if not for the podcast. It completely blows me away. And so thank you, everyone, for your writing, for contributing, for being part of this incredible, oh God, I'm going to use that word, journey.
At least we haven't talked about the weather today, Mark.
No, that's true.
That was the other one I was doing in numbers. How many episodes we mentioned the weather? Oh, and how many episodes I mentioned I played at Glastonbury, obviously. There's many other numbers. So if you've missed any numbers, drop us a message. Come to the website, click on, if you want to send us a happy birthday message, or come to the website, click on contact us and send us an email. If you've got a book that's been inspired by the podcast, please reach out and ask us about this pile that we've got growing, because we would like to see it grow. I'd like to see Mark eventually have to get a library extension, and I would love it if you want to stay in touch with us and get more on this podcast each week, pop along and get the newsletter and get entered into the competition to win the Back to Reality audio book. Thank you for all the incredible comments that are coming in, all the thanks. We love you guys as well. Thank you so much, everyone. And I think, Mark, it's time, isn't it, to remind people where they can get hold of us on social media.
Yeah, we're at Bestseller XP on Twitter and Instagram. We go to Facebook, we're Bestseller Experiment. I should add that I've just been booted off the BXP group by Facebook because they thought I'd made a rude comment. I'd actually I meant to write how and wrote the word ho. So they booted me out. I've had an apology from Facebook, but I still can't get in there for 23 hours for some reason. But anyway, apart from that, the Bestseller Experiment group on Facebook is brilliant. You get that if you're a top tier supporter on Patreon. What else? I don't know. Just come and say hello. You can find us. Google us. Come on.
Bestseller Experiment. It's there, folks. It's there. Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, thank you everyone for being live with us in the studio today, for all your brilliant comments that have kept us giggling throughout. Thank you again if you're listening to this on Monday or sometime during the week, or in 4 years from now, if you found this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yes, if you are listening to the recording, there's going to be extra bits because we've had some lovely authors send us little recordings wishing us happy birthday. So we're going to JD's going to edit those into the show.
Yeah.
And we'll put links to everything we've mentioned in the show notes. So that's if you've got your app. If you open up the podcast, you'll see links there. If you go to bestsellerexperiment.com and podcast episodes, each episode has show notes, has little links to all the things that we talk about. If you've enjoyed, shameless plug, if you've enjoyed this live shenanigans, I'll be doing more of this when I launch my book, Babes in the Wood, on the 28th of October. So do come along to that, where watch out for my social media because I'm giving away chocolate again for my book, Babes in the Wood.
Gosh.
So more chocolate.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, listen, folks, please, tell your friends, and thank you so much again for all of your love, support, and your inspiration, because you guys inspire us as well. All right, folks, so until next week, it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Take care, everyone.